clear that rabbis, when they are ordained at their seminaries, are equipped with knowledge, the knowledge that their seminaries deem necessary to acquire the title of rabbi. It doesn't take rabbis too long to discover that in the field there is a disconnect between what they know and what they want to teach and what their congregants or others who might come to their adult education classes are really interested in learning and seeking. Sid Schwartz has been an entrepreneur in the American synagogue life, in the field of Jewish education, for a long time. He's written extensively. We know him from Panim, which he founded and ran for many years, from the many, many articles that he's written, the books that he's written. And in 2002, Sid was awarded the prestigious Covenant Award for his pioneering work in the field of Jewish education. 2007, he was named by Newsweek as one of the 50 most influential rabbis in North America, and he serves as a senior fellow for Klal. So, with no further ado, it is my distinct pleasure to welcome Sid Schwartz to this podium to hear your words and to teach us.
Thank you, Jerry, for the introduction, and I really appreciate the invitation from Steve and the Planning Committee to do this talk, primarily because about 6 months ago I was commissioned to write a chapter for a book that's coming out, published by Sage Publications, called Religious Leadership in America. It'll be a 2-volume study, which probably will come out in a year and a half, given how long it takes for books to come out. And I'd gone to my computer at least a half dozen times to try and kind of like get that thing out, and it wasn't happening. And when the invitation came to prepare this talk, there's nothing like a deadline to kind of get the juices flowing. So what I'm going to be presenting this morning is actually an excerpt from a larger study, which is called Jewish Megatrends, and I'm hoping there'll be a way to get that out into the Jewish communal bloodstream and thought stream sooner than the book will see the light of day. And you have a handout which has a couple citations. I'm going to get to there in a few minutes. I want to develop a little bit of an analysis first. And the title for the talk is The Torah We Know, the Torah Jews Want. And I have to here give credit to Rabbi Harold Schulweis, who's really one of the great Jewish rabbis and great Jewish leaders of our generation. But one time he gave a talk, and he said the following, and I probably quoted this more than any other thing I've ever heard from in my career. He said the following. He says, rabbis have answers to questions that Jews no longer ask. And that's really the inspiration for this talk. And I really want to talk about the problem, and I don't want to sugarcoat it because, the old Apollo thing, Houston, we have a problem. When you work with an organization, we're always told to reframe problems as challenges. And probably when the article finally comes out, I'll use the word challenge, not a problem. But Beinenu, on the inside, it's a problem. We have a major problem. And let me just document some data points. Then I want to step back and take a broader picture of why we're in the predicament we're in. And then I want to move to 4 propositions with evidence from each of the propositions. And hopefully we'll have time for you to kind of react to the propositions and see whether they align with your own experience and thinking or whether you see it differently. So that's what I'm looking forward to be doing. So some of the evidence of the problem. I want to look at kind of the main touchstones of the organized Jewish community. Jewish Federation system. In 1985, they counted 900,000 donors. This past year, they counted 450,000 donors. That's a 50% drop over the course of the past 25 years. The reform movement, as you know, in 2009 had to cut 20% of its budget, about 60 staff people nationally. There's been a movement afoot for the past decade of major congregations in the URJ threatening to pull out of the system. And there's attrition in the reform movement. The recent strategic plan put out by United Synagogue Conservative Judaism that indicated the following, and this is only the last decade data. If you go back 25 years, the data even looks scarier. But a study that came out just about 6 months ago indicated that there has been a 14% decline just in the last 9 years of the time frame of the study 9% decline in overall membership in United Synagogue congregations. However, if you isolate the Northeast, which is where the biggest numbers are, that 9-year decline is 30%. In addition, looking at the national membership of the United Synagogue, only 9% of United Synagogue membership is under the age of 40. If you were a company and you had that data, you'd sell. Finally, in the past 15, 20 years, we've had a proliferation of seminaries. It's a very ironic phenomenon that at the same time that our synagogue market is shrinking, we have an increase in number of seminaries out there training rabbis. What's that about? You really have to ask that question. I do retreats under the aegis of Klal for Rabbis Without Borders for students. I do it twice a year. I now have 9 seminaries sending students to these retreats. 9 seminaries. But we know the market is shrinking, so I think we have to ask that question. I paint this picture because communal institutions reflect a set of values and priorities. They represent our Torah, because institutions are simply a reflection of how we want to do our work based on the way we understand the community to be functioning. And it's abundantly clear that this Torah, that which we know, the Torah that we've grown up in and some of us have helped establish, is not precisely the Torah that Jews want. And we have to ask the question, why? Now, I've been doing work for more than a decade with rabbis and synagogues around the country, and I noticed the following phenomenon. It's just a matter of human nature. When you're in a crisis mode, there's even an expression in English for this. They'll say, put your head down, bear down, and just plow through, right? And I wind up finding myself saying to rabbis more and more, they've got to find a way not to work harder, which is what the first default position is for responsible leaders who are heading up an institution in crisis, but rather work smarter. And what that means is actually not putting your head down, but picking your head up. What it means is taking 3 steps back from the problem that is right in front of you, your crises du jour, and to say, why do I have 4 crises du jour every day? And it's not going to be solved if I simply put in another hour or 2 each day or another 10 hours a week, which is what most rabbis do, and we know where that leads. It leads to burnout. Okay? So what I want to do here is reflect in my presentation what it would look like for us to take a step back from putting our head down and picking our head up to look at a slightly wider horizon. It's kind of like if you're filming a movie and suddenly the camera pulls back. So you're not looking at the crisis in the household where there's some tension in the family, but you kind of see the block, the village, the city, the country, the world. And to do that, I want to say a few words about generational change. Okay? Because we can't understand our current predicament if we don't understand the passage of the generations. And I want to specifically cite 3. My parents' generation, my generation, and my children's generation. My parents are both Holocaust survivors. They were both born in Europe. Their family started in the shtetls of Poland. They moved to Berlin. They had choice. My father came to this country on the last successful voyage of the St. Louis. The next voyage was called the Voyage of the Damned. He came on the voyage just before that Voyage of the Damned, came at age 16 when he was still able to be ransomed out of Berlin by an aunt and uncle in Brooklyn. My mother went the other direction. She went to pre-state Palestine, to the Yishuv, where her family lived for a while until they couldn't make it financially, and they moved to the States, which is where my parents met. My mother was actually in the first class of stewardesses on El Al Airlines. I did an Ulpan when I was an undergraduate, and one day we were asked to buy Yediot Achronot, the Sunday edition, which comes out Friday, of course, right? And there was an article about the changing uniforms of stewardesses over the generations, and my mom was the first picture. When my parents established a family in America, they and their generation were characterized by 3 things. Number 1, they were deeply scarred by the Holocaust, because both had lost most of their family in the war. They also were inspired by the birth of the State of Israel because they lived to see that, and they saw that as the future hope for the Jewish people. And third, they were deeply indebted to America, which gave them the opportunity to live the most